last thing I did, last situation I had, I'd finished setting up a debug visualization. And these lines, the yellow is supposed to be their intersection point, but it's not. You can see it's not even on either one of the lines. And then the major goal is that the lines will turn white when they're one of their intersecting. So to make that happen, the yellow spot has to be in the correct position, first and foremost. So I'm going to work on that. Let's see. I need mischief. No, don't download a new version. Okay, so I'm going to redo the math that I did last time because obviously something went wrong. So what I have is 2 points. I'll call them P and Q. And they each have an X and a Y. And these 2 points are forming a segment. Like so. P, Q. And what I want to do is, first of all, I want to make sure that I have the ability to turn that into an equation of the form ax plus by equals c, because then if I have 2 equations of that form, I have a system of equations in a, b, and c that I can solve. Like a, b, and c become the numbers in the matrix and the vectors and stuff for the thing. Pretty straightforward stuff, but somehow I got something wrong. So it's either this or my actual solution, like solving the matrix. One of those 2 things went wrong. So I'm going to start with seeing if I got the formulation of a, b, and c correctly. So I don't remember what I did last time. I think I probably did it this way because it's the only thing I can think of to do now, which is that basically if you're going to define your function, it's easiest to start with it being parametric. So I would do something like that equals, and then it's just the lerp between p and q. So it's like p minus I'd do that with p plus q minus p times t, right? So at 0 you get p, at 1 you get q, in between 0 and 1 you get your line. And if I do that out, I get, that's like 2 different functions, one for x and one for y, so I get x at any given t equals p of x plus q of x t minus p of xt, because I don't really need those parentheses, but I'll just leave it. And the same concept in y. And then I would solve it for t, which would basically mean subtract the p of x and pull the t out, so you get x minus p of x equals t q of x minus p of x. And then divide by that. Alright, so whether it was x or y, either way I would have gotten one of those 2 variables minus p of one of those 2 variables divided by, it's basically the unlerp equation as I call it, which makes sense. And there was a minus sign there. So yeah, it's like if you have a lerp from P to Q, and that gives you x, then you unlerp the x from P to Q, and that'll give you the t you had. And then you can set that equal to the 1 for y, because x and y will both be defined by this function, and so they're related by t now. So we can say that will also equal y minus the unlerp of y along the y-axis. Those two equations are equal, and then I just want to solve for, well, I want to put it into this form so that I have a constant times x plus a constant times y equals a constant. So, cross multiply x minus px qy minus py. Oop, don't change what I'm trying to do. That's annoying. Qpy equals y minus py qx minus p of x, and then I would I'll say that this right here is what are u. I'll call this u, and I'll call this v. This section right here, and this section right here, so that I can distribute them and not write as much. So then ux minus upx equals vy minus vpy. And then I subtract the vy over and I add the upx over. So I get u of x minus vy equals upx minus vpx. And then I basically have my a, b, and c. So a should equal u, b should equal negative v, and c should equal upx minus vpy. Okay, so that seems all good. I'm going to take a quick peek at the chat and see if anyone has any tips. Yeah, it doesn't look like anything in there. Hello everybody, Canuckles. Oh, you're leaving? Alright. Bye, Canuckles. Hello insofar as. I think everything here is good. So, whoops. Yeah, what I want to do is really quick compare this with my code here. So, I gotta somewhat remember, how this works. a2y minus a1y, is that u? xyz, r2 xyz. Those look like rows to me, so that I could do sort of sweeping operations on each row. And I think so that would be like my a, b, c of one equation. Yeah, that makes sense because this is all using the a point. And So, is this a good value for A is the question. A2, so QY minus PY. QY minus PY. That's the correct value for U. Sure. QX minus PX. Is that the right value for V? That QX minus PX is correct, but this should be negative V. I somehow lost the negative, I think. I think that could be the problem right there. Or at least one of the problems. So, if that's true, then I want to... Basically, I want to make that a 1. Whoops. Got undo now, so that's kind of nice, too. And... down here, I got the same thing wrong. So swapping those is the same as negating it, obviously. And then I also want to ask, does my C add up? So C equals U px minus vpy. So it's basically A times px plus B times py. Whoops. A, yes. B, px, py. Yeah, that looks good. Alright, so let's see if that works. Because maybe I've just solved the whole problem. Here we go. That is not correct, but in fairness, I haven't built my new code yet. Aha! That collision point is in the right spot now. So that may have been our whole problem right there. Let's see if I can cause any big problems, though, because I know there was some definite questions about... Huh. That's odd, isn't it? Where did the yellow spot go? It should be right there. Why is there no yellow spot? And why does it think they're colliding if there's no yellow spot? Because they're definitely colliding. I'd hazard a guess to say that this has to do with the fact that that's a vertical line. Whoops, I want you to be perfectly horizontal. Actually, let's try purple being vertical and the pink one. Aha, that is correct. So there's always some interesting questions, like if I invert the locations of the points, what happens? Okay, what if I put this one here and this one down here? Okay, so purple being vertical is okay, apparently, unless I just didn't quite reach perfect verticality. Hard to know for sure. Aha! Pink being horizontal has a problem too? Is that the lesson? Does the pink line just not work well? When, yeah, it doesn't seem to care about the fact that this was vertical and this is still broken either way. Because that should totally be colliding. But if pink was just not perfectly horizontal, it would work. Okay. So which of the two lines is the pink line? I think I closed 4coder by accident. But that's okay. We can do it again. Colors, code, app color, tree gen, collision. Okay, there it is. So yeah, that's where we're putting out a point at pout. Segments collide. Now what I should do is I should say C will be at like 3, 3, since that's kind of far away from everything right now, so that I will see that it hasn't been set at all, if that's even a possibility, because it might be. Let me take a quick check. Pout p out. One second, gotta take a note. The text isn't lined up the way I want. Alright, yeah, so it's totally possible if it thinks that if r1.x equals 0 or r2.y equals 0. What? That does not make sense. I think that's just arbitrary and a mistake. Well, no, that's if you're going through the solution and one of your... Yeah, so that's a mistake in the linear algebra side of it, I think. I think that's what that is, because I'm saying down here that I have to divide by x and y. But just because I end up with zeros there doesn't necessarily mean it's unsolvable, maybe? I don't know, let me think about it. So, if r1 is x, that means up here... Alright. Well, let me answer the other question I wanted to answer, which is which one of these two lines is the pink line? The red one goes from P0 to P1. So that's A. Okay. And I didn't think that there was a problem with B so much. So, at least I didn't see it. It didn't appear to be obvious. So what does it mean if r1 is x, or r1x is 0? You had this. What sort of stuff happens to r1? Well, maybe r2.x didn't come out to be 0 like it should have been. So what I would like to do is I'd like to say the whole point of this is to make r2.x 0. Right? So r1.x divided by r2.x gets multiplied in. And the reason for that is so that you divide out whatever was in that x position, you multiply in what it was in the x position of r1, and then you subtract r1 so that x from r2, that way whatever was in the x is equal to what's in the x of r1, and r2.x should be 0. So I'm going to assert that. I think I have an assert. And then in the second step, what happens is you do the same thing and you apply it to the y column so that so that r1 dot y should equal 0. So let's make sure that those things are happening real quick. I don't have assert. Maybe I'm asserting with little a. Yes, I have little a assert. Okay. There we go. So you can see I've definitely gotten to a position where r1.x was 0. But I'm not sure why that would be so. So what I'd like to do now is begin debugging this with a debugger so I can step through the code. Hello, MinePow2. Tiny Angry Crab asks, are we witnessing the introduction of undo today to save our Abners? Yes, undo is in, and I can take a little time to show you what it's doing so far. In a bit. Let's see. Yeah, we're right at the beginning. I'll take a minute once I've got this once I got this thing I just now started thinking about worked out so that I don't lose my train of thought. So what I'd like to do is introduce a breakpoint, but then uncheck it because I wanted to. Ooh, I need to build with debug, don't I? Tiny Angry Crab wants to know if I can time travel to save the code that Abner lost in the pre-undo era, and the answer is I cannot. I can't interfere with someone else's timeline like that. So, plus there's the small dilemma that I don't actually have a time machine at the moment. I'm not saying I won't ever have a time machine. Ow, crap! That scared me. Okay, getting back onto this. What is this? Oh, so that is asserting now. Interesting. I wonder if it wasn't asserting because I wasn't building in debug last time. That would make sense. Right, so this is like, that's like a rounding error problem. Because it's very close to 0, but it's not quite there. Which is gonna happen. I'm not great with scientific computing. I don't know how to handle rounding situations and stuff. What you might do is just introduce an epsilon and say, look, if it's smaller than like this, if it's within this range of 0, it's 0. Is like the thing I always do, but I'm wondering if maybe there's something better I could do. So I'd like to take a quick peek. ENT Jack asks, I'm not sure I understand this entirely. Is the goal to have each branch out into 3 child branches? No, that has already happened. I could show you the sort of basic tree stuff going on. But when I first stated the problem, what I specifically said was I wanted to make a 2D polygon generator, which means none of the edges of the polygon can intersect with itself, because otherwise that's not a polygon. So to make it actually a polygon, I'm trying to prevent the spawning of branches that will collide, and then in the future, my goal is sort of to work out cool ways of like controlling an interesting way of parameterizing your tree so that you can get lots of different trees without necessarily doing random generation. It could be that you just take my parameterization and stick random stuff in, but I want to sort of come up with a way to like parameterize it under a cool system that's sort of fun to play with and can create different effects for different looking trees and different maybe sizes and ages of trees or something, which will come later on once I have like basic geometry working. So my goal right now is to just get the polygon part to be true. So after the R1 minus R2, you know what I could do that'd be really cool is if I could like say, oh, Tiny Angry Crab's on his way out, so thanks for coming. It'd be really cool if I could say like, since it broke here, I can't do the slidey around thing. It'd be really cool if I could say I wanted to start executing from here again. I want to see why I can't make something like that work real quick. Because like if I try to just say ignore where you are, ignore this segment of the call stack, pretend, because you can slide this thing around if it's not in the call stack. So, I don't know. How to debug? Well, I know what I gotta do. It's annoying, it's Visual Studio weirdness, but we're gonna replace these asserts with ifs, with stuff in them that I can put breakpoints on. That way I can sort of safe, that way I don't have to, like why doesn't the assert just act as a breakpoint? That would actually be kinda cool, huh? Alright, so if r not r2.x equals 0, int x equals 0, copy, paste, wait, first I want to kill you, kill you. Okay, that looks good. Dan Golf asks, what were some of the first solo projects you worked on? In what kind of work? I mean, do you want to know about the first time I worked on a C or C++ type thing by myself? Or the first time I worked on any kind of programming-like thing? Or a particular type of project? Because there's a lot of different ways I could approach that, so pare it down for me. D7 Samurai asks why I'm doing the not with the parentheses rather than just not equal. I did that because my asserts were assert and if go the other way around, right? So if you want to assert that something is true, you say assert this statement. And if you want to do like break, not assert, but like you want to be able to do what I'm doing here, where I'm going to put a breakpoint right there, then what you actually want is the not of that. So if not this statement is like the general thing that works for all statements. And the reason I write it that way in this case was just so I could copy and paste it. But that's like a habit I get into, because then when I go back to turn this into asserts, I don't have to change these, I just change what's around them. And from a code transform point of view, it would be easier to implement the algorithm that does that, so I practice doing it. Just for some reason. I don't know. That's like all I've got. There's no particularly great reason, I guess. Dan Golf says C++ projects. Okay. So the first thing I did solo was the first thing I did solo was working on machine learning kinds of things, like neural networks to be specific. Mainly what I spent most of the time there doing was taking very large matrices, like 1,000 by 1,000 or something, in that range, 10,000 entries, and trying to optimize their multiplications and additions. So I was like messing with that, and I didn't do a great job. And after that, I worked on sort of binding that to Lua, because for some reason I thought that'd make it easier to compose my experiments that I wanted to run. So I ended up working on that for a while, but it was never great. Plus, I didn't really have any idea. I tried to learn like OpenCL to maybe do it on a GPU, which obviously would be way better for something like giant matrix operations, but I never really got into that, and then I gave up on that project. If you want a project that I did complete, the first project I've completed that was solo was a game called Push. Which was all in C++ using SFML and a few other smaller libraries. Okay, so I'm gonna get back to this now. So I had just switched to that so that I could do breakpoints like this, which is what I wish certs would do. I didn't build it yet, so gotta do that real quick. Wait, still didn't build it. Sheesh. This is why you need like built-in building so that it's not an annoying part of that cycle getting in the way. Because I lost basically all of that was because of the fact because if it was built in and when I build it, I don't waste the time switching once and then seeing errors when I build, then fixing them and switching again. It would have cut that whole thing down to like from 3 or 4 mistakes to 0 in most cases if I had built-in compilation. So now what I want to do is try to make this line horizontal again. There it is. Oops, I want it to break here. Okay, continue. Now I can't get it to happen. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. So now, the trick I can do is I can take you and start you at the beginning again. And that means it'll reset R1 and R2 for me and I can watch it happening. Of course, these vectors look giant, but they're really just X, Y, Z. The others are other names as inspired by Casey's setup for vectors. Martin Cohen, yeah, it's STB TrueType. Is rendering all of my fonts in 4coder. Can't do that forever because it doesn't have hinting, which makes the font look a little less crisp. There's 2 different things I could do to make it more crisp. I could do hinting, and I also could do, actually I could do both of them. I could also do clear type aliasing, where you sort of pick colors around the edges so you have even higher definition basically. But I don't know if I'll ever do that. Yeah, maybe like a long time in the future. Perfect Beast, I don't know. Perfect Beast asks if there are programming jobs, if it's worth to know C and C++ for programming jobs, and I don't know. I've never had a proper programming job. And knowing C and C++ hasn't changed that, but neither has knowing several other languages, so I mean I'm probably not the right person to ask, would be the upshot of that. Alright, let's walk through this. So x becomes 1, 50 versus 49. Sure. Y becomes negative 91. Sure, that makes sense. Z becomes some other thing. Okay, I accept that. And this one down here, negative 20, negative 20, and negative 9600. Okay. 30, 50, 430, 450. Sure, because I haven't moved that one at all, so that makes sense. And let's see, R2 is R1. Okay, so that'll be basically divided by negative 20 onto R2. So all of that gets divided by negative 20, thus making the x a positive 1, hopefully. Yes. And then R2 minus R1. This could obviously be optimized because I don't need to perform all three of these operations. If I know that I want the x to become 0, I could just do two operations and set the x to 0. And then R2.x equals 0, so good. And then, let's see, that, okay, R2.y is a 92, and I multiplied that in hoping to turn this into a 92. It actually became a 92.076. So that when I did the subtraction, y wasn't totally a 0. And I'm pretty sure, I'll do it again, but I accidentally skipped the step that was most important. Did it again. If Visual Studio didn't lag so far behind, I could get there without, like, skipping it. Okay. So negative 91, 92. Yes, so that makes sense that you'd get something only close to what you wanted, because you divide that by negative 91. Now, what I could do that probably have better results is to apply that as two separate steps. So maybe I'll do that. I was trying to avoid that because if I apply this as two separate steps, that's two divisions that I have to do, and then two multiplications, whereas this makes it one division and a few multiplications. But it looks like that might lead to, I'm going to see if I can get more accurate results the other way, and if so, I guess I'll have to go with it and optimize. Optimizations will have to be a secondary concern. Okay, so let's do R2 divided by equals R1.x. R2.x. Right, and then down here, boom, boom, R1 divided by equals. Again, I'm not really that well studied at all on scientific computing or like numerical error, stuff like that, how to avoid these kinds of things, so this might actually make the problem worse, but it's a good experiment to run. If you are in the chat and you know that that's another reason I didn't do it. Times equals 1.f divided by. If you are in the chat and you know that this is a bad idea or have a better idea, you should share it so that I may learn a little bit about this. There we go. And I will check the chat now. Perfect Beast asks why I haven't gotten a job, and it's because I haven't applied for one. It's actually, to be fair, I've done programming work that I was paid for on a sort of freelance basis from time to time. But I'm in school, and right now I don't care about having a job, so I don't. And I've had a freelance job for C++, and then I had one for like web dev at one point. Both were pretty good for what I wanted at the time. Okay, so let's see if I don't know if I built this. I'll check the chat again in a minute if you have advice for me on the front of how to compute this with less error. Did I really nail it? That's hilarious. That's crazy, actually. But let's take a peek and see what's going on here. It might be that since I'm doing the 1 divided by, I'm still getting the same problem. So, let me walk through to there. R1 is negative 61, and after that multiplication there, it's a little bit less than 1. And so then I do this multiplication here, and I get a little bit less than 67, or 69, which is what I wanted. And then I do the subtraction, and I'm a little bit less than 0. Yeah, so... Alright. Well, the accurate thing will be a little bit more optimal than what I'm doing right now then. Actually no, because now it's just going to be 2 divisions, and I was actually still making it 1 division. Now that I think about it. But, if I say that... I'm just going to have to go ahead and optimize this at this point, because R2 a little bit, and by that I mean getting rid of the extra operations, not actually measuring, so it's, who knows if it's optimal. R2.x will become 0. Wait, not yet. R2.y times equals R1.x. R2.z times equals R1.x. R2, which was this line, R2.y minus equals R1.y. R2.z minus equals R1.z, and R2.x equals 0. Right, and if I do the same logic down here, I'll get R1.y divided by equals R1.y. No, R1. Oh, okay, so that has to be x and z this time. R1.y, that's this line. Whoops. R1.x times equals R2.y. R1.z times equals R2.y. R1.x minus equals R2.x. R1.z minus equals R2.z. There. So there's an advantage to monospace fonts that I've been thinking about, that with the proportional font you don't get, which is that when you have a typo like that, like the missing dot, with a monospace font, it's just sort of obvious because it's the only line. Like these are all the same length, and then this one has one that's the same length, but they should be symmetrical. So why would that be true? And then you can detect that and do it. With proportional, sometimes you'll get and you go, oh, but it's like it's proportional, so they're all wiggly a little bit. But that was just, that one particular one was too much. But it makes it a little harder to detect asymmetry, since you don't necessarily know that the lines should be exactly equal length anymore. So that might be a downside that's actually important that I've been thinking about. Hello, Abner. Oops. Where am I? There we go. So let's see if that's better. Let's see if that's better. Wait, hold on. I gotta build it. Hey, Abner, you wanna see something cool? Oh noes! I've deleted half my project. Oh wait. Control Z. There it is. Oh, I didn't set Y to 0 on that one. Whoops. Whoopsie. Do you guys all want to see that again? Because I can redo it and then undo it again. Redo, undo, redo, undo, redo, undo, redo, undo. It's got a nice color fade too, like the paste. Redo, undo, redo, undo. Okay, so I need to put the y in there. So r1.y equals 0. Save. Undo, 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 undo. Redo, 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 redo. Alright. Let's see. And then we just need to build that. Awesome. Alright, now I'm gonna try to move this line again. See if I can hit the point. Okay. Right, so the breakpoint isn't happening yet, but I'll find it. It's in here somewhere, that breakpoint. Oh wait, no it's not, because I'm... Okay, so what I want to do is I want to say somewhere around here where the breakpoint used to happen, like maybe right there. Because that's still wrong, obviously. But what is happening now is these breakpoints aren't ever going to trigger. So because I'm just forcing them to be true. Which raises the question, do I even actually need to set them to 0? Is another thing. We'll see. I'm guessing I don't. So I'm just going to say that those are gone actually. Undo, 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 redo, undo, redo, 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 redo. Okay. And then what I need to do is figure out why we're getting this case in situations where I wouldn't think we would get it. Because sometimes this comes out to be 0 or this comes out to be 0, and I don't think it should be 0. So, we're going to look into that. Okay, when this happens, I would like a break. No, wait, hold on, wait, you gotta build. Then you can run. Where's the yellow point? Why is the yellow point gone? Okay, so maybe I do need to set those to 0 for the purposes of something else? No, the point should be getting set right there. What's the deal? What's the deal? That X doesn't make any sense. So I busted something when I tried to optimize it. What did I bust? divided by r1.y times r2.y. I don't totally get it. r1.x, r2.y. They both look fine. So y, rz, and z so screwed up. Maybe I should go undo the optimizations real quick. For reals. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. There we go, we can redo a little bit of that. No wait, no, no redo. Keep it right. Okay. So the thing, well, just undo it until I get back to where I thought I could do divide by equals. Yeah, okay. Something went wrong. And actually divide by equals doesn't exist, so I'll even take those out real quick. And there. Okay, so that is literally back to where we started, where the math was usually working. Gotta rebuild it. Okay, so the math works here. So what is the actual values for z supposed to be? 440 and 40. Okay. Now I'm going to do it one step at a time, and each time I'll make sure that it's still working as I go. So, step 1. I don't want to do that division that way. I want to do r2 dot. Is there a guarantee that r2.x is even non-zero? I mean, b2.y minus b1.y could totally be 0. Right? I want to think about that. Why am I not getting an error from that ever? I should have gotten that error. I guess that would only happen. No, that would happen if the blue line ever was horizontal. That should have happened. Maybe it just never actually literally was, but yeah, that should be a problem, right? Although technically, if R2 is already 0, then you just don't need to do any work, is what that really means. So it's not a mathy problem, it's just an implementation problem here. Anyway, I'll just chug ahead with what I have and then consider that case later, since apparently it's not a problem right now. So I'm just going to do divide by equals R2, even though that's like too super redundant, I'll just type it out. I'll be literal. R2.x, R2.z, R2.x. And then I can take that out. Okay, save that. And build and run. Okay. That's already different. That is already different. How is that different? Because I changed... Okay, gotcha. Gotcha, that makes sense. So you can't do it quite like that. You gotta do this one last. Which wasn't a problem before because, you know, it was sort of being handled by the rules. I know what I'm thinking, I just don't know what to say to describe it. Do I have the right values now? 440, 40, great. So that's back to working. How about this next segment? R2. So this time I'm not changing R1 ever, so I can just do them in order. Times equals R1 dot x, R2 dot y times equals R1 dot x, R2 dot z times equals R1 dot x. Okay. Gotta build it though. Got to build it. See, what I would do is someday overloaded operators like my multiplication operator for the vector will be recognized separately. They'll be colored because they're semantically known to have a different meaning than a normal times equals, and then you can just say you want to inline it. That is one of the things that I want to do someday. Alright, so that's still working. R2.x minus equals R1.x, R2.y minus equals R1.y, R2.z minus equals R1.z. Let's make sure that works. Good. So what I should do is have you here so I can check that way. Good. Okay. Your turn, guy. R1 dot x divided by equals R1 dot y, R1 dot z divided by equals R1 dot y, and R1 dot y divided by equals R1 dot y. That looks correct. R1 dot x times equals R2 dot y. Y z. Okay. Minus equals R2 dot x, R1 dot y minus equals R2 dot y, R1 dot z minus equals R2 dot z. Gotta rebuild. Okay, so it's still working. Now, and we know that those are supposed to come out 0. So, let's talk about possibly doing some optimizations here. These x's, there, and there don't need to happen at all, because when it's all done, the math says r2.x should equal 0. Right, and then we're just going like that. And same thing with these, except it's this y right here, this y right here, and this y right here, r1 dot y equals 0. Okay, still correct. Cool. Cool, cool. Ugh, I'm out of time. I'm supposed to stop after an hour. Screw it, I'm gonna go for like 10 more minutes. I want to go for 10 more minutes because I feel excited about this. So, I really need to figure out why that is an issue. As in, why do I get r1.x equals 0 or r2.y equals 0 when I clearly shouldn't get that sometimes? So, I've got a breakpoint there still. There it is. Okay. So now we can see one of these guys equals 0. The x does. So let's see if this has anything to do with Alright, R1 and R2. What do we have in R1? X is 0 in R1. That could be an issue. That could be an issue. Abner Coimbre, I will be at the Handmade Hero chat. I will be. Yeah, so the thing that looks most promising is the fact that r1.x came out as a 0. Which means that these two guys have the same height, right? 50 and 50? Yeah. Okay. So, when it goes through there, it multiplies a 0 in there. Right, so what's the linear algebra? I gotta do a little bit of thinking about the linear algebra now, because there's some special cases that I guess I ignored last time. That's the situation we're in. So, first of all, if you have a 0 here, and you have non-zeros in these locations, so I'll call them alpha, beta, and I believe this one is delta, all of which are non-zero, then that means this right here is the first equation, py minus qy. So you have a situation where your first line looks like this, basically, and your second line is like that, right? Something sort of like this is going on. And in that case, all you need to do to continue solving is to recognize that there's a 0 here and swap which one is your first equation, which one's your second. Because we're going to have to, unless, hold on. Yeah, so if your first line has a 0 there, yeah, and you can clearly just swap them for free. So, because the thing works out the same way either way. They're symmetrical. So if I just swap those, that'll be fine. What if those are both 0 though? What if I have a 0 here and my delta there? If that's not delta, let me know before I keep calling that delta, but I think that's lowercase delta. So I have two zeros. That means I have two lines that are both horizontal. Okay. So I'm guessing if I ever have a 0 here, like I have alpha there, 0, beta, 0, then that means that these guys are both like this. Yes. Cool, cool, cool. So really I need to check if there's a 0 in this location, because then I swap them. And now if there's not a 0 there, the other issue was if you already have a 0 here, or if you already have a 0 here, skip the step where you try to 0 out those spots. So first I'll do that because I already have thought that through, and then I'll attack this problem where alpha and beta are the corners that might become 0. Well, basically where this is 0. Okay, got it. How much did I just undo over here? I want to redo that if I undid any of it. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, so this is assuming that R2 is not 0. So, only do this if R2.x does not equal 0. If it is, then, like, problem solved. We're already got what we want. This right here is assuming that R1.x R1.y does not equal 0. Okay. Then the other issue was, what if this comes out to be a 0? And that'll come out to be a 0 if the first line is horizontal. And I realize now that whenever I have parallel lines, I actually have to do some annoying stuff. Alright, well, first of all, it's just a matter of if this does not equal this, then do what we were doing. Otherwise, do the same thing, but swap the 2's and the 1's around. Whoops. Whoops. Okay. That gets me most of the way there. Now the problem is just this case down here. This can still happen. I can still get a 0 there or there if they're parallel. And that's actually how so like if you're in a situation where this is a 1, and this is a 1, and this is a 2, and this is a 2, so you linearly dependent. These guys are linearly dependent, right? These two rows, so he'll knock him down to 0, but at the same time he'll knock him down to 0, right? And when that happens, you've got a problem. Because they're parallel. And then when you try to do this, it's gonna be a waste of time anyway. Now my question is it possible for there to be non-zeros everywhere, or just something everywhere? I'll go with A, B, since I really don't know what I would do after delta. I'll go with English. And then you do this subtraction, so that becomes a 0, and that becomes some other number. Okay, let me draw those on first, and then the numbers into the matrix. And then that becomes a 0, and that would become some other number. If that's non-zero, then this would never become 0, right? So if this does this, we already are guaranteeing that this doesn't start 0. Actually, we're not. So we have to check if this starts 0 right off the bat, and if it is, we have a parallel lines. If it's not, then after doing the reduction on this line, we check if this is 0, and if it's not 0, if it is 0, we also have parallel lines in that case. So there's two checks. Right away, check if he's 0. After the first reduction, check if he's 0. Okay, so we've done the work. If r1 dot x equals 0, parallel. Alright, after the first reduction, if r1 r2 dot y equals 0, you have parallel. Right, which is the case down here that I'm checking against. And I think that there's no way that that shouldn't be possible if we reach this far. So what I'll actually do is I'll assert, assert little a, I'm only doing little a assertions, that this is not true. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Shoot. My system's not that smart. Oh well. And then just always do this work if we reach this point. And the reason I say I have to do, you know what? They can stay tabbed because I'm not doing that right now. Okie dokie. So, if we hit a parallel situation, I want to do a goto right now. But I'll try to make it, I'll see if it's not too complicated. Maybe a goto is a bad idea. I don't know. So, the question now is, okay, once we know they're parallel, okay, so yeah, I won't do a goto simply for the reason that we can take advantage of where it happens to not have to special case whether we're checking x or y. So if this happens, r1.x equals 0, we know a very specific kind of situation has arisen. Both of these had to be 0 for that to happen. Zeros there and there, non-zeros here and here. For these are computed by the difference between two y's. So those are 0 when the line is horizontal. So in that case, I'll use x to determine if they are colliding or not. And y. I have to use y, the y's have to be equal, and their x's have to have overlap in their intervals. Interval overlap. Okay. So, if that's the case, then at the end of this if we'll return the result, and the result will equal r1 dot. Okay, now the question is if r1 is a1 dot y equals b1 dot y, because we're already assuming a1 and b1 and a2 and b2 are at the same y's, like a1 and a2 are at the same y's and b1 and b2 are at the same y's. So that and a1 dot x. Yeah, so then we got to just do a quick interval test. Is less than or equal to a1 dot x, and a1 dot x is less than b2 dot x, or, and this whole thing needs a pair of parentheses. Same idea again, with the A's and the B's flipped around. A, B, B, A. Great. Now in the other case, we're guaranteed that the x's, oh, no. We can do the interval test, but how do I test if the lines are parallel or equal? Wait. Okay, I remember. So A1, B1, A2, B2, X vector equals C1, C... If I'm not mistaken, then what happens here is that these two lines are parallel. If these are written in such a way that they're equal, right? Like, you did, okay, here's what it would be. They're basically, if these two are linearly dependent, these two rows here, and the C's were equal, then you would get, and you express them in the same exact, so that A1 equals A2 and B1 equals B2, these would be parallel if C2 equaled C1, and otherwise they wouldn't be. So the real question is, after this first reduction, if you have you're trying to get a 0 here. If you wound up with a 0 there, then they're linearly dependent. So then the question is, do you have a 0 here? If there's a 0 here, then they were parallel. That's how I can tell in this case. So that is r2.z equals 0. And then I need to do an interval test. And we've already determined that their y's... So the thing is, if I do x, they might be parallel vertically, and then their x's would be... they would be... like invalid, because all of the x's wouldn't answer the question. They'd all be at the same spot. But if I have already gotten past this part, I know that the y's aren't equal, so I can rely on the y's, is my theory. It's a bit of an intuitive leap, but I think I can rely on the y's, because I'm pretty sure if the y's are equal, they have to be caught up there, because that was the whole sort of point of that one. So I think that should be it. Let me build it. Sure. R2, uninitialized local variable. I'll believe it when I see it, anyway. R2. Ah, right here, R1. I didn't finish swapping my R1 and my R2 totally. R2, there we go. Ta-da! And I'll take you out of the mix. What's that assert right there? Assert that, okay, sure. Now, let's see if we've got correctness. That is looking pretty good. That is right on the mark. Now my box is too big, I can't tell with precision if it's correct. So maybe I gotta go make that smaller. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So I think that I can call it a day and say that I have my segment collision working now. So I went 10 minutes over my extra 10 minutes, but I got it done. Thanks everybody. I'll wait around for just a minute in case anyone wants to shoot some questions at me. If you want to see something you'd like to see happen before I call it a day, let me know. Abner says that he tried a VR demo today and hit an assertion error and crashed on Unreal Engine 4. So that's good. How many files does my project have? Well, let's check. Okay, I just ran that on the tree project, which I'm sure is not what you care about. But the answer is 7. But you have to remember, this wasn't always my tree project. There's one in there for some totally unrelated stuff. So really more like 6. But if we want to look at 4coder, 16 and 11 headers. Okay, so Abner would like to know what makes me decide how to split things up. So there wasn't a huge rule for a while, and the rule has kind of materialized over the last few versions as I've worked out a pretty important system. Um, Initially, it was just like things were separated based on where if they would change separately from other things. So like if this piece of code all went together but on a different platform, that code would go out and something else would come in, but this code over here would be the same on both platforms. Obviously I separate that out just so I can swap things in and out. And so I have a separation between those things and also keyboard handling, because I'm not sure, even to this day I don't totally understand keyboard handling, so that I know how to do like people who have Dvorak and Workman layout and these kinds of things. I don't actually think about that in the code at all, and I don't know if I have to, but that code is separated also for the purpose of if I need to be able to swap out layouts of keyboards separately from swapping anything else out, it's separated for that reason. After that, there was just a file called fored.cpp for a long time, and that was growing to be about 4,000 lines long, which I ended up splitting up just because the reason I split that up was because unlike before, it wasn't a necessary split up in terms of making it easy to handle. It was more conceptually like all I had fored.cpp and foredEditing.cpp, and the editing functions were things that were directly about how I change text, how I handle the file struct. Basically, it had become big enough that it could be several thousand lines by itself, and everything else about the app was stored in the fored.cpp still. And that distinction I really just made because I noticed that I had like before that my code was sort of interleaved, but the things that where I was working on simultaneously would have stuff in between them that wasn't related. So I could have just like kept it in one file, but had top be one thing and bottom be the other thing. But it felt easier to organize by creating a blank file and using that file as my splitting point. Since then, a new thing has arisen, which is a pretty clear reason why I add a file when I need to add a new file, and it's led to a few smaller files than what I would have had before, but I prefer to have them separated into separate files just because it makes sense to me, and that's that I now have this concept of a view, which is basically there's the structure of the program is you have panels which determine basically the rectangular space on the screen, and they're controlled by the layout system. And then the layout system has views, which are it's different. What a view does is it binds something you might want to do, like looking at a file, editing colors, whatever, to one of the panels. And the reason I make that distinction is so that you can like, for example, if I'm in 4coder and I've got TreeGen open, and then I do Control I, and then I think, wait, I didn't want to switch, and I hit Escape. I want the state of my panel to be exactly the same as before. And if I switch to this, the state of the panel is completely changed. So I wanted a separate concept so that I could like reserve the state of the old view and switch back to that. So that's views, and then there's different types of views. So these are both file views, but then this is an interactive view, and this is a theme view, right? So now all the code relating to one view It's sort of like the way you organize classes in C++, except there's not header and CPP. It's just one CPP, and it's not really about it being a class so much as just all the things, how to render it, how it handles input, are all grouped together based on what type of view it is. So that is something I'm doing right now to organize the code as well. Alrighty, so thanks again for everybody coming out to see the stream. I think I'm happy with the progress today. Today was one of the better days. Undo certainly helped me a couple times there. So make sure to check out more about 4coder at 4coder.net. I'll be streaming here next week, same time, 5 p.m. EDT, and make sure you check out handmadedev.org if you haven't